I'm going to talk to you today about the perfect tense, which is a tense that we use to talk about things in the past. Now, the reason we call it the perfect tense and not just the past tense is because there's also another type of past tense, one that we learn in Year 9, which is used to describe what you used to do in the past over a longer period of time. For example, when I was younger, I used to watch TV on Saturday mornings, or I used to play tennis in primary school. Whereas the tense we're learning now in Year 8 relates to single specific actions in the past. For example, yesterday I watched TV. Last weekend I played tennis. So, what is the perfect tense? Well, as I was saying, it's the tense used in French to talk about single specific actions in the past. But it's not only used in French, it exists in English too. For example, I have watched TV. However, this isn't the most common form of the perfect tense in English. We're probably more likely to say, yesterday I watched TV rather than I have watched TV, or last weekend I watched TV. So let's take a look now at how it's formed. It's actually formed in exactly the same way as in English. So I have comes from the verb to have, and watched is the part of the verb that we call the past participle. So the first thing that you need to be able to do to form a verb in the perfect tense is to look at the verb avoir in the present tense. So I suggest at this point you pause the tutorial and see if you can remember and write down all of the correct parts of the verb avoir. Now let's check your answers. So j'ai is I have, tu as is you have, il a, elle a, on a is he, she or one has, we have is nous avons, you have is vous avez, and they have is ils ont, elles ont. So I'm just going to talk you through a few important details here. If you're referring to a friend or somebody you know well, you're going to address them using tu. If you're referring to somebody you don't know very well, a person in authority or a stranger, you would address them using vous. You'd also use vous if you're referring to more than one person. Il is used to talk about a group of boys or men, and elle is used for a group of girls or women. If you've got a mixed group of male and female, even if there's a group of 10 girls and only one boy present, you would always use the masculine version, which is il. Okay, and on is very commonly used in France. In English, we'd translate it as you or one. For example, if you join the gym this month, you don't have to pay a joining fee. Or if one joins the gym this month, one doesn't have to pay a joining fee. So it's used to describe a general subject or person rather than a specific person. Okay, so let's look now at the past participle. So just like in English, you take something away and then you add something. So we'll find the infinitive of the verb, so find which verb we want to use. For this example, we're going to use to watch. In French, regarder. So first of all, we need to take something away. In English, we take away the to, and in French, we take away the er at the end of the verb. So we end up with watch and regarde. And then we need to add something. So in English, we add ed, and in French, we add e with an acute accent or accent aigu. So we end up with watch or regarder. And you'll notice that the pronunciation of regarder, to watch, is exactly the same as regarder, watched. That's because er plus e with an acute accent make an a sound. Okay, so what happens next? Well, you just add the two bits together. So you take the j'ai from the verb avoir and then the past participle. So j'ai regardé is I have watched. So the past participle stays exactly the same, it's just the verb avoir that changes. So we've got tu as regardé for you have watched, okay, or il a regardé, he has watched. So let's see if we can apply this rule to some of the verbs. See if you can find the past participle to all of these verbs. Again, you may wish to pause the tutorial while you write your answers down. So jouer, to play, becomes jouer with an acute accent, e an acute accent. Danser, to dance, becomes danser, danced. Travailler, to work, is travailler, worked. Again, you're hearing the pronunciation is exactly the same from the infinitive to the past participle. Manger is to eat, manger is ate or eaten, and téléphoner is to telephone, téléphoner, telephoned. So you just add avoir at the beginning to turn these verbs into the perfect tense. So let's see if you can make these make sense. So I'm going to show you the past participles. I want you to see if you can write down she played. So think about which part of the verb avoir goes with she. Your answer is elle a joué. So we danced is nous avons dansé. I worked. J'ai travaillé. You ate. Your answer is tu as mangé. And finally, they phoned, feminine version, would be elles ont téléphoné. Okay, so if all that makes sense, move on to the next section. So that's it for ER verbs. However, not all verbs end in ER. We also have IR verbs and RE verbs. And whilst they are less common than ER verbs, it's just as important that we learn them. So first of all, find the infinitive. We're going to practice this using the verb to finish, which is finir. Okay, you notice it's an IR verb because it ends in IR. So can you remember what the first thing is that you need to do? Okay, so we need to take something away. So in English we're going to take away the to, and in French we're going to take away the IR. So we end up with finish and fin. And the next thing we need to do is to add something. So in English we add ed, and this time in French we're going to add the letter I. So when you take off the IR, you replace it with I. You end up with finished and fini. So that just leaves RE verbs now. So can you remember what to do first? So we find the infinitive, and for this example we're going to use to reply, which is répondre. You notice it's an RE verb because it ends in RE. So we're going to take away the to and take away the RE at the end. We end up with reply and répondre. Okay, next we're going to add ed in English, and we're going to add you in French, which gives us replied and répondu. Okay, so if you're unsure of any of those parts that we just talked about in relation to RE verbs or IR verbs, take the tutorial back a few steps and go over this again. Let's see if we can apply these rules to some other verbs. Okay, so you've got 5 different IR and RE verbs. Have a think about how you would change choisir, to choose, into chose or chosen. The answer would be choisi. Your next verb is perdre, which is to lose. And how would you say lost? So notice it's an RE verb. Think about what you've got to do when you take away the RE. You end up with perdu, lost. Rougir is to blush. Okay, this is an IR verb, so we're going to take away the IR and we're going to add an I. You end up with rougi, which is blushed. Grossir is to put on weight. So the past participle of grossir is grossi. And finally, we're going to look at attendre, which is to wait or to wait for. And the past participle of that is attendu, which would be waited or waited for. Okay, so let's put this into practice now. See if you can make these verbs make sense. I've given you the past participle. You need to find the correct part of avoir. So we chose would be nous avons choisi. You lost. Your answer should be tu as perdu. They blushed. Your answer is ils ont rougi. He put on weight. Il a grossi. And finally, I waited would be j'ai attendu. Okay, now that's it for today's tutorial. If there's anything you don't understand, go back to the beginning, watch the whole tutorial again, or choose particular sections if you think you might need to do some more work on I-R verbs or RE verbs.